Welcome back to another side story bundled with volume 26 of the rezero light novel. I have previously covered the Emilia side story, so I highly recommend you check out a summary for that also. This will be a summary for the Vincent side story, meaning that there is only one more side story left, which is the Rem side story, which will hopefully be coming in the future. I will say that Ice from Witch Cult Translation has actually translated this side story, so if you would like to read it instead of listening to a summary, I highly recommend you check the description or pinned comment for a link to the translated side story. Anyways, this will be a lot quicker than usual due to the fact that this side story has been translated. The story starts with Vincent in the far east of the Budheim jungle. We see that he's next to a tombstone. This is actually the grave of the previous emperors of Wallachia, and it turns out that this place is a secret kept from most members of Wallachia save for a few people. The previous emperors normally had no remains. That is due to the imperial selection for Wallachia, where the previous emperor is normally burnt to ash by the Yang Sword Wallachia. We see that Vincent had doubt about the idea of the Great Cascade, and we see that this grave is situated at the end of the world and he is overlooking the Great Cascade, also known as the Great Waterfall. He ponders upon this, thinking that the Great Cascade is imposing on all those who live, with everyone being trapped on this seemingly floating island. Vincent moves up to the gravestone and kicks it over, procuring a bag filled with numerous items: a sword, a dagger, a ring, a cloak of concealment, and camping equipment and tools for survival. This equipment was placed there so that should an emperor have to flee, they would get the necessary tools to stand back up anew. The first thing Vincent did was conceal his identity, which he did with the cloth, woven in a way that it would not untangle. Vincent states he needs to lay low for a while, knowing that assassins will be sent for him. During this, he stops talking like the Emperor, Vincent Wallachia, and instead adopts the persona of Vincent Abelux, or Abel. With his back against the Great Cascade, Vincent headed deeper into the Budheim jungle. We then get a time skip to after Vincent met Subaru, so after chapter 2 of arc 7. The reason why Vincent was on guard was because he thought Subaru was an assassin and potentially an untrained assassin, and so he kept his guard up. However, after the encounter, Vincent states that it's pointless to put himself on edge due to the person he was dealing with. Vincent ponders over the boy, who was simply a petty thief, and about the information that the boy told him about the hunter in the forest. Vincent pondered about how the boy knew that there was a hunter and then managed to escape without being hurt despite the boy being powerless. Vincent stopped speculating and instead focused on the Imperial Army, which was setting up base. Their goal was to make contact with the Shudrak people. However, Vincent knew that their true goal was to exterminate the Shudrakian and also kill Vincent himself. Vincent thought about the Shudrakian people. If he played his cards wrong, even Vincent himself would not be left without damage. Luckily, he bumped into a boy who he then gave his dagger. There was actually a reason for this. Subaru had black hair, which was rare in this world, and with the dagger, Subaru could be useful bait. If the assassins attacked Subaru, it would give enough time for Vincent to enact his plan. He further pondered about Subaru. Vincent knew of Subaru's exploits and how his name had risen in the past year. Furthermore, Wallachia's borders were closed and Subaru just so happened to show up. Vincent contemplated if this was actually the true Subaru and whether or not someone was imitating him. Vincent masked his trace from his camp and headed into the forest, in the direction Subaru said to not go in. We get a time skip several hours later and Vincent comes across an ivy trap. We see that Vincent didn't hear any death scream from Subaru, so it's possible that Subaru survived, or he simply died far enough away that Vincent couldn't actually hear his dying screams. We see that Vincent couldn't care if Subaru lived or died. What was more important was that he found traces of the Shudrakian people. Vincent wondered if the Shadrakians knew of the activity outside of the forest with the Imperial army. Regardless, he took a gamble and triggered the trap. The traps were set up so that when triggered, it would send out a loud noise alerting the person who set up the trap. Vincent was then approached by a Shadrakian woman, a girl with green dyed hair, who is surprised that Vincent wasn't caught by the trap, since Vincent just triggered it without being caught. Vincent then tells her to stop her useless chatter, which catches her off guard. He then hands her all of his equipment and tells her to take him to the Shadrakian people. This action in itself showed that Vincent knew of the Shadrakian customs. Men were a useful asset to a woman-only tribe after all. Vincent thought about the pieces he had on his board. He didn't have much, but he thought about potentially getting the self-proclaimed Natsuki Subaru on his side. He followed the Shadrakian girl further into the jungle as the story ends. So we learned quite a few things from this side story. The idea that Vincent wanted to use Subaru as bait rather than actually help him. The idea that Vincent actually knows who Subaru is. And what's really interesting is that the Imperial army, they want to destroy the Shadrakian people. So even though Subaru wanted to sort of act as a mediator between the Shadrakians and the Imperial army, we can see that that wouldn't actually happen, which ironically goes back to Arc 7, Chapter 13, when Vincent told Subaru that he's living in the dream world. Anyways, thank you for watching, and thank you to my channel members.